What's up, everybody? It's Sanctuary. So we're starting off Sunday school today. Hey, I'm teacher in training, Charlie Reap. And I will be doing, our Sunday school lesson is called, oh, y'all can't really see it. Oh. If you join our Discord, we can drop our stuff in the Discord channel later. We're covering 3 principles of stewardship for Christians who hate self-care. And y'all can see Paul a little bit.
Yeah.
Paul is our mascot for seminary. He's the black sheep. And in the corner it says, I'm here to make this call out hurt less. So Paul will be giving us commentary throughout the Sunday school lesson. And I can already hear y'all just
wanting to hide under the couch, yeah.
I was going to say quacking over this, which at Sanctuary, if you're not familiar, we basically, whenever we get a call out, we either quack or we moo or do some sort of barnyard animal noise. It stems from a couple of Cards Against Humanity cards, which Cards Against Humanity, official card game of Sanctuary. So,
Pokemon, other official game.
Next time. So, I know we're talking about stewardship today, but as I was explaining to Apostle Leanne and Minister Nick today, that stewardship is basically self-care. And I found the history of self-care pretty interesting, especially how it's been around longer than I've even known about, and even probably longer than the history that Slate Magazine lists. So, Slate Magazine says the concept of self-care started as a medical practice, with doctors encouraging patients to, quote, treat themselves and exercise healthy habits, most often under the guidance of a health professional, end quote. Now, self-care as a medical concept was eventually applied to high-stress and emotionally draining professions where caring for oneself mentally, physically, and emotionally had to be a priority. Otherwise, caring for others would be difficult, if not impossible. So, and I will also drop this article in Discord, so even more of an incentive to join our Discord group. We have a lot of fun. But in summary, self-care became a radical political act during the civil rights and women's rights movements. In the 1980s and 90s, self-care became kind of frou-frou, as the Slate writer said, but it was commercialized and associated with wealth. And then after 9/11, self-care once again became a radical political act.
And may I add, in the 90s, its scent was cucumber and melon. Anyway.
Oh, gosh, that brings me back. Woo.
That she bought all the bath stuff. And like you say, the bubble bath thing.
Yes.
And, you know, was
I actually
associated
quote
with it.
you in this, actually.
Oh,
it's like,
oh, really?
literally my next line was, it's worth noting self-care isn't one size fits all. And as you say, self-care isn't always face masks and bubble baths. You're welcome. Just turn the camera so everybody on Facebook can see your
They
reaction.
already know who I am.
No, I want to see your reaction. Anyways, so a writer named Freddie Hiroshin says that true self-care is figuring out what works for you and honoring what your needs are, working within your limitations. And now that quote is up on the PowerPoint. Again, I will drop all this in Discord for y'all. So, this quote means that self-care applies to more than just physical needs. It's also mental, emotional, financial, and spiritual well-being. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like stewardship, which is considered biblical principle. Oh my gosh, I wish y'all could see the look that she's giving me right now. And as Paul says, stewardship, it sounds like self-care to me. So, stewardship, according to Merriam-Webster, is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. And that is taught as a biblical principle. But it's very interesting that we don't talk about self-care as a biblical principle. So why do we need to talk about self-care at church? As Paul says, because it's biblical. You're welcome. But, you know, it's not at all talked about, even though it is so closely aligned with stewardship. Otherwise, you know, because it hasn't been talked about, Christians like me have been carrying around toxic theology for years.
Same, Pastor.
Yeah. So today I thought it'd be super helpful to go over just 3 passages that encourage self-care, or should encourage self-care and personal stewardship, but have actually been twisted to promote toxic theology. So, if y'all have Bibles or Bible apps or whatever, we've got the verses on screen for anybody who's in attendance. I pulled my translations from the NIV 2011, which is found on Bible Gateway. So we are going over Luke 6, verses 27 through 31. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks of you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. And now, as Paul says, little Paul the sheep over here, I don't know if y'all can see it on the screen, Paul is saying this does not mean you should be a doormat. And I'll explain what these verses are really talking about in a few minutes. But the next verse I want to go over is Mark 12, verse 28 through 31. Now, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. And as Paul the sheep also says, this does not mean you're worth less. And now for the final verse we're covering today, Philippians 2, 3 through 4. I'll let you get to your verse.
There you go.
So, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. And as little Paul the sheep over here says, this does not mean you're unimportant. So now, what's the underlying message in all of these verses? Now, at face value, the passage in Luke sounds like it's saying, be a doormat. Let people walk all over you. The one in Mark sounds like it's saying, everyone matters more than you. Don't make yourself a priority. And the one in Philippians sounds like it's saying, putting your needs before anyone else's every time and no matter what makes God happy. But in taking these passages at face value, we miss the underlying message that taking care of yourself is a priority. It's essential to survival. The original audience knew this, and so it didn't really need to be said. But being 2,000 years and an entire continent removed from these people not only makes it harder for us to understand the underlying message, but it also opens up the possibility that passages like the ones we just read will be misinterpreted. So, what can we learn about self-care and personal stewardship from these verses? The first one is love your own worst enemy, yourself. And this came from me first. Yes, I see your reaction. I also see your reaction.
You were straight up in my sermon, and I don't appreciate it.
Well, we did have sort of the same kind of, we're supposed to be, anyways.
True, yeah.
Even your socks match, y'all.
Yeah, more than just our socks. So if we read through Luke 6, 27 through 31 again, it actually gives us a really good outline for what we can do when your own mind mistreats you. So I have anxiety, and like a lot of other people who struggle with mental health issues, my mind is often not very kind to me. And no matter how well I treat others, I can't seem to extend the same grace to myself. I heard that sigh. Yeah, but Jesus commands us to do just that. So, your mind is mistreating you? Pray for yourself. Say kind things about yourself. Do something nice for yourself.
Like write an 800-word essay of compliments.
Exactly. Shout out to Lena. So, basically, treat yourself as you would treat others who are struggling. And these are just a few of the ways that you can love yourself at your worst. Yeah. So the second point, if it'll load, there we go, is to remember your value. And we'll be covering the passage in Mark 12, 28 through 31. So, growing up in conservative churches, I got the message that I was worth less than other people. Somewhere along the way, the concept of selflessness got twisted into self-sacrifice. Yikes. It wasn't enough for me to care about other people. I was responsible for meeting their needs, whether or not I was physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, or spiritually able to do so. And I'll admit, I resented other people at times for not making me a priority when I was making them a priority. That was a red flag for that what I believed was toxic theology.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that doesn't mean our needs are more important than anyone else's. We need to remember that God treats us all equally. As children of God, we all have the same standing in God's kingdom, and we should treat ourselves accordingly. And now I put down these questions to help anybody who maybe hasn't considered whether their upbringing was toxic or not. So the concept of selflessness is self-sacrifice in disguise if you answer yes to any of these questions. Were you taught to meet others' needs and ignore your own? Did you ever resent other people because you were meeting their needs and they weren't reciprocating? Or did you think you were worth less because of how people treated you? And like I said, as children of God, we all have the same standing in God's kingdom, and I pulled that from Romans 8:17. And now for the last tip is find a balance between pride and humility, and we are covering Philippians 2:3-4. Now, the original audience of the passages we read, word's not going today. Now, the original audiences didn't have a warped sense of selflessness like we do today. Their first priority was making sure their needs were met and that they got what they wanted. Forget about a total stranger. Now, the Old Testament actually gives us many examples of, people who did just that. We've got Cain, who was so jealous of his brother that he eliminated his competition. David wanted the wife of another man for himself, and he made sure her current husband was killed so that he could get what he wanted with no consequences. Would you like to say that for the people on Facebook again?
I've said man whore, that David and Solomon were the ultimate man whores on Facebook. So, like I said, they all know me already.
I wanted you to speak up in case, in
they
case
all
people
know
couldn't
me.
hear. Yeah. Where did I stop? Okay, yeah, even James and John, the disciples of Jesus, I had totally glossed over this. They had the audacity to ask for the most prominent positions in heaven, and they threw the other disciples under the bus in the process. So pride often carries a negative connotation in church, and for good reason. The things these people did came from a place of excessive pride. However, pride is one of those things that isn't a binary. Too much pride can certainly give you an inflated ego. There's that side. But so can too little pride. Either extreme isn't grounded in reality, and there were sighs from the whole room. So, now true humility, in my opinion, is found somewhere in the middle. It comes from knowing that, yes, we're children of God, but yes, we're also deeply flawed. And having humility allows us to extend grace to ourselves as well as others. Now, all this to say that, we've unpacked a lot in the Sunday school lesson. But if you remember anything, remember that stewardship extends to self-care. So if stewardship is a biblical principle, so is self-care. And self-care is a principle that Jesus promoted, not self-sacrifice, which is selflessness to the extreme. And let me go over the concept of self-care again. Self-care is a principle that Jesus promoted by taking care of himself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually whenever he could. And as little Paul says over here, be like Jesus. Take care of yourself too. And where did I leave off? Jesus cared for people in many ways, but he also took time to prioritize all of his needs. And the last thing I'll leave you with is self-sacrifice is selflessness without boundaries. You do not want to live in this extreme. So that's the lesson. Y'all have any questions? I'm just getting lots of stares that y'all can't see right now. They're all just staring daggers at me. It's fine.
It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
It's a very hard lesson to get in there.
Oh,
Very,
absolutely.
Very, very hard.
Absolutely.
Especially if, like you said, you were programmed already.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's a very hard concept. I'm finding it very hard. I
Oh, yeah.
understand it.
Yep, that's the
understand
part.
it
It's like it
really
gets in the
well,
brain, but
but
it hasn't gotten in the heart yet.
It has to get. It's hard.
You're in my blog that I didn't write yet,
Okay.
called Theory versus Application. In other words, we're all for body positivity unless it means accepting our own bodies.
Quack.
Or, we're all for including people, oh, until it's somebody that we don't like, or we have to do it ourselves, or, that it's, be not hearers of the word, but be doers. And that, I was like, you're in the blog. I didn't write it yet. I have the notes. I haven't had a chance to do the blog yet, but that's the concept, that we often are okay with stuff in theory. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. But then you're writing an 800-word essay of compliments on yourself because you didn't do what because you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and you don't apply it, and so it's like, I think we need more of that kind of stuff, though. Hey, Lena, because I know Lena. Hey, Lena, because Lena follows me on Facebook, so I think that. As much as we kind of laughed about it, or we kind of make a joke about it, I think that there is something to the reconditioning, that we need to do something. We need to have some sort of an incentive to recondition, because it's like, just doing it because it's what we should do is not enough of a reason. Not wanting to write 800 words of compliments about yourself, that's a reason.
But it goes back to that one-liner you said in there about that as people, we're imperfect, or we're...
Yes, we're children of God, but we're also deeply flawed.
Well, there you go. And that's what, that's basically what she just said. We're all flawed. It's great if it's someone else, but if it's us, then it's different,
And I'm my own worst critic. I know that everybody else is their own worst critic too, if we're being really honest with ourselves. So it's like we're almost able to accept the fact that we are deeply flawed, but we don't accept the fact that we're children of God. And it's like, we can't live in just one camp. We have to meet in the middle.
I think that there are a lot of people that don't think they're flawed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we seem to know all of
I
them.
think that they really, they take the children of God thing, but then they're not flawed.
Well, it's not an either or. It's
No, they don't
spectrum,
like.
yeah.
They
But
don't
is
like
it that
concept.
is it that they think they're not flawed because they're children of God, or it's almost like, and I'm gonna go here with
It's
this.
because they
No,
are.
that they're better than needing to be children of God.
Explain.
Because if you're all perfect and puffed up, you don't need that. So I told Pastor Cash yesterday, shout out.
Doing all the shout outs.
Hey, Pastor.
Hey, y'all.
We were talking about Amy Semple McPherson, who, for those who don't know who Amy Semple McPherson is, she was a pastor in the 30s in California. And she was really dramatic. But she was dramatic personally as well as in it. Like, when she went on the road to evangelize, she would set the tent up. They would do tent revivals, and she would put in a boxing ring and hang up gloves and say that they were sparring between the devil and God.
Oh, wow.
She was phenomenal. She was a phenomenal showman. She also faked her own kidnapping. She was really out there. And we were talking about it, and I said to him, because he always compares me to her, and I said, I'm not going to stage my own kidnapping, but I said that I don't care. Yeah, I know. I figure we're all good with that.
Okay.
But I said that I don't feel that we're fair about her in history, because people talk about or focus on the drama without focusing that she had so many healings. She was approved by the American Medical Association. Like, they were actually documented healings. And she had the biggest church in the world at one point in time, Angelus Temple in Los Angeles, California. And I said that, the Bible says that we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency may be of God and not of us. And that is on our logo, that is on our pens, that is like our theme verse, because I argue, and I did a message years ago called Earthen Vessels, that we need to stop sanitizing church history. We have to stop sanitizing ministers, because God worked in spite of them and in spite of their humanness. And I said, and maybe he worked because of it. And so if you don't deal with that humanity, if you're so full of yourself and your self-esteem, that you don't deal with your humanity, then you don't need to be no child of God. You're better than it. They might not say that, but it's kind of like, they don't.
Or that because you are a child of God, anything is acceptable.
Right, then you can get away with anything.
Right.
Yeah, the Apostle Paul, what was it? He said everything is permissible.
Not everything is permitted.
Yeah.
Everything is beneficial. And not everything is permitted, not everything is beneficial.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
we have their humility because we don't think like that.
Right.
We don't think like that. So we take what they should have onto ourselves. I mean, we have it. We have more than enough for everybody out there, who doesn't have it. So, you take it and you don't feel that way at all. You feel humbled by that. That you are a child of God. And, and these people, there are people that just don't. We see
Right.
them every day. We really do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I had an argument with somebody years ago. I mean, like way, way, way back, who was Southern Baptist. And I mean, I say that because doctrinally that's relevant. And I said something about being sinners. And he said, well, I'm not a sinner anymore. I'm a saint. Same type of thing that you're talking about. And he said, well, how can we be saints and be sinners? And I said, I guess you're going to have to ask God about that. I mean, I didn't have any concept kind of the binaries thing back then. And I really did not have much of an understanding of grace. But, because it is that way, I don't know. And because Jesus, like I always say.
Because
So.
you're not Jesus and you're not God. So. You're a sinner.
like Steve Miller said, when you say I'm a picker, I'm a singer, I'm a lover, I'm a sinner. There you go.
People don't like that. They don't like the label sinner. And they probably do things every day that are sinful, but they may not consider them sinful. Like not being nice to somebody. I mean, I don't know if it's a sin that's going to damn you to hell, or just going into Harris Teeter and dealing with all the bougie people in there who think that you shouldn't be there because that's their store and you're just in the way. Get out of the way. That's not being nice. That's being kind of sinful. It doesn't do unto others. You would have them do unto you.
Well, notice how history is kind of repeating itself, because that's how people in ancient times were reacting. Obviously they didn't have Harris Teeters, but they were the religious leaders were like, you don't what was it? Some of the disciples were like, you don't eat, some of the disciples didn't eat cleanly or something, and the Pharisees looked down on them for that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so the Pharisees, and they're all just like,
They didn't practice the rituals like the washing the dishes and the cups and
yeah,
something
and so
like that.
the religious leaders were like, ugh, you're too beneath us. You can't be part of our religion. And notice who Jesus actually hung out with. Jesus hung out with people who were labeled sinners, and the people knew that they were sinners. And it's
Right.
Chuck, it's
They
always
were
somewhere to preach.
And maybe
this is all I'll say.
but maybe that's the point too.
It's by not calling yourself a sinner, you are essentially alienating yourself from the people that Jesus wanted to reach.
Kingdom of God belongs to the outcasts.
That's all I'll say, because you do have a sermon to preach.
And you took half of it, but that's fine.
I'm sorry, no, yours is going to be a lot cooler though. I'm
It will
excited.
just validate what she says.
Yeah.
It will just.
There we go.
confirm
It's
it.
all fine.
Yes.
We're all I already know next month we are gonna preach the same thing.
That's true.
I know. I just
So-
giving Chuck a hard time.
Yeah, I know.
That's fair. Yours has memes though. Your memes are funny. I took a peek.
Okay.
But anyway, gonna wrap this up.
Okay.
We'll see y'all in 30 minutes.
Hey,
for our
Lena.
Sermon.
Yes.
Cool. Bye y'all. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a few.
Lena came on.
Yay! Hi Lena.
I did text her saying
Are
that she
you
got a
off?
shout out.
The
Yeah.
difference.
Almost.
the
You have to wait a
difference in
minute.
What you're doing now and what she did the first time she did Bible study. Do you
Are we
have
having issues?
the tape of that? Of her first Bible study that she did?
I don't want my big huge face up here. Okay, where's
Say hi to people.
well there we go. Okay.
It might have been recorded here. I don't know about Facebook Live.
Well,
I can't get it to
online,
finish.
But she, the difference is like night and day.
Night and day. It feels a lot more.
I mean, you're
Natural.
You're comfortable. You're relaxed.
Yeah.
I mean,
can't get it to stop.
Okay.
So
Oh.
We're not talking bad about y'all.
no, we're not talking bad about anybody. So
Just having technological issues. It's fine.
We're just giving her.
I can't get it to stop.
Oh, Facebook's live. Why?
I'm hitting the finish button. It's not finishing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want Charlie to go.
I was like, no, Nick has a sermon to preach.